Judges 18. The Danites seek a new home. In those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of Dan was seeking an inheritance for itself to settle in. For to that day no territory had fallen to them for an inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Israel, so the children of Dan sent 5 men from their clan out of their entire population, men of valor in Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy out on the land and to explore it, and said to them, Go explore the land. When they came to the hill country of Ephraim, to the house of Micah, they lodged there. When they were near the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young man, the Levite, so they turned aside there and asked him, Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What do you have here? He said to them, Thus and thus Micah did for me. He hired me and I became his priest. So please inquire of God, they said to him, so we may know whether our way that we are going to be successful. Go in peace, the priest said to them. The way that you are going has Adonai's approval. Then the 5 men left and came to Laish, and saw the people there living securely, like the Zidonites, tranquil and unsuspecting. Ooh. For there was no humiliation or anything oppressive in the land. Moreover, they were distant from the Zidonians and had no dealings with anybody. When they came back to their kinsmen at Zorah and Eshtaol, their kinsmen asked them, What do you say? Arise, let's go up against them, they said, for we have seen the land. See, very good. Yet you're sitting still. Don't be sluggish. Go, enter, possess the land. When you get there, you will come to unsuspecting people. The land is spacious, for God has put it in your hand, a place where there is no lack of anything on the earth. So from the Danite clan, from Zorah and Eshtaol, 600 men set out armed with weapons of war. They went and camped at Kiriath Jearim in Judah. Therefore they called that place the Manaha Dan to this day. Behold, it is west of Kiriath Jearim. From there they passed on to the hill country of Ephraim and came to Micah's house. Then the 5 men that went out to spy on the country of Laish said to their kinsmen, Do you know that in these houses there is an ephod, household idols, a carved image, and a molten image? Now therefore consider what you have to do. So they turned aside there and came to the house of the young Levite at Micah's house, and asked him about his welfare. Now the 600 men of the children of Dan, armed with their weapons of war, were standing by the entrance of the gate. The 5 men who had gone to spy out the land went up and entered there. They took the carved image, the ephod, the household idols, and the molten image, while the priest was standing by the entrance of the gate with the 600 men armed with weapons of war. Now after these had gone into Micah's house and taken the carved image, the ephod of the household, and the molten image, the priest said to them, What are you doing? Be quiet, they said to him. Put your hand on your mouth and go with us, and be to us a father and a priest. It is better for you to be a priest to the house of one man, or to be a priest of the tribe and a clan in Israel. So the priest's heart was glad, and he took the ephod, the household idols, and the carved image, and went along among the people. So they turned and set off, and placed the little ones and the cattle and the goods in front of them. When they were at a good distance from Micah's house, the men that were in the houses near Micah's house gathered and caught up with the children of Dan. They called out to the children of Dan, who turned their faces around and said to Micah, What's the matter with you that you have called them out? You have taken away my gods, which I made, he said, and the priests, and walked away. What do I have left? And how then do you say to me, What's the matter with you? But the children of Dan said to him, Don't let your voice be heard among us, lest bitter fellows fall upon you, and you lose your life with the lives of your household. And the children of Dan went on their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he turned and went back to his house. Then they took what Micah had made and his priest, and came to Laish, to a tranquil and unsuspecting people, and struck them with the edge of the sword, and they burned the town with fire. There was no deliverer, because it was far from Zidon, that they had no alliance with anyone. It was in the valley near Beth-Rehad. Then they rebuilt the town and lived in it. So they called the name of the town Dan, after the name of their father Dan, born to Israel. However, the former name of the town was Laish. The carved image, Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Manasseh, he and his sons were priests of the tribe of Dan until the day of the exile from the land. So they set them up Micah's carved image that he had made all the time that house of God was in Shiloh. The house of God was in Shiloh. Judges chapter 19. Crime at Gibeah of Benjamin. Now in those days there was no king in Israel. There was a certain Levite dwelling in a remote part of the hill country of Ephraim, who got himself a concubine out of Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine played the harlot against him and went away from him to her father's house to Bethlehem in Judah, and was there for a period of 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her to bring her back. He said to his servant and a pair of donkeys with him. He had a servant and a pair of donkeys with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the young woman saw him, he was glad to meet him. His father-in-law, the young woman's father, kept him staying with him for 3 days, eating, drinking, and lodging there. Now on the 4th day they woke up early in the morning, and he rose to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward you may go." So the two of them sat down and ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, "Please be willing to spend the night, and let your heart be merry." Then the man rose up to depart, but his father-in-law urged him, so he lodged there again. Then he woke up early in the morning on the 5th day to depart, but the young woman's father said, "Please strengthen yourself and tarry until afternoon." So both of them ate. And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the young woman's father, said to him, "Behold now, the day is waning toward evening. Please spend the night. Behold, the day is drawing to a close. Lodge here and let your heart be merry. Then tomorrow get up early for your journey, so that you may go home." But the man would not spend the night, so he rose up and departed and came to a place near Jebus, that is Jerusalem, and with him were a pair of saddled donkeys and his concubine. When they were near Jebus and the day was almost gone, the servant said to his master, "Come, please, and let us turn aside into the city of the Jebusites and lodge in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a city of foreigners who are not of Bani Israel. Let's go on to Gibeah." "Come on," he said to his servant, "let's try to reach one of these places. We'll spend the night in Gibeah or in Ramah." So they passed on, went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. Then they turned aside to enter and lodge in Gibeah. When he went in, he sat down in the town square, for there was no one who took them into his hand to spend the night. Now behold, an old man was coming from his work in the field at evening. The man was of the hill country of Ephraim, but dwelled in Gibeah, while the rest of the men of the place were Benjamites. When he lifted up his eyes and saw a wayfaring man in the open square of the town, the old man asked, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" "We are passing from Bethlehem of Judah," he said, "to the remote part of the hill country of Ephraim. For I am from there, and I went to Bethlehem of Judah. But now I am going to the house of Adonai, yet no one has taken me into his house. Nevertheless, there is both straw and fodder for our donkeys, and also bread and wine for me, your handmaid, and the young man that is with your servants. There is no lack of anything." The old man said, "Shalom to you, let all your needs be on me. Only don't spend the night in an open square." So he brought him back into his house and gave the donkey to fodder, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. While they were making their hearts merry, I don't know if I was meant to say back. Behold, some worthless men of the town surrounded the house. Pounding the door, they shouted to the owner of the house, "Bring out the man that came into your house." They said to the old man, "So we may have relations with him." But the man, the owner of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my fellows, please don't do this evil. After all, the man has come into my house. Don't commit this disgraceful deed. Look, here is my virgin daughter and his concubine. I will bring them out to you now, and you may abuse them and do whatever pleases you, but don't do such degrading thing to this man." But the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine and brought her out to them, and they raped her and abused her all night until morning. When dawn broke, they let her go. As the morning came, the woman came and fell down at the doorway of the man's house where her master was until it was full daylight. When the master rose up in the morning, opened the doors of his house, and went out to go his way, behold, the woman, his concubine, had collapsed at the doorway of the house with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he said to her, "and let's go." But there was no response. So he placed her on his donkey, and the man got up and went to his place. Now when he entered his house, he took a knife and laid hold of his concubine and cut her limb by limb into 12 pieces and sent her to all the territory of Israel. So it was that everyone who saw it said, "Nothing like this has ever happened or been seen since the day of Bani Israel came from the land of Egypt to this day." Think it over, take counsel, and speak up. Judges chapter 20, the Battle of Gibeah. Then all of Bani Israel went out and assembled as one man from Dan to Beersheba with the land of Gilead, before Adonai at Mizpah. The chiefs of the people of the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers armed with swords. Now with the children of Benjamin heard that Bani Israel had gone up to Mizpah. Bani Israel asked, "Tell us, how did this wickedness take place?" So the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, answered and said, "I came with my concubine to Gibeah of Benjamin to spend the night, and the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house over me me at night. They intended to kill me, but instead they raped my concubine until she died. So I took my concubine, cut her into pieces, and set her throughout the land of Israel's possession. For they have committed something obscene and degrading in Israel. Behold, all your sons of Israel, give your advice and counsel here. Then all the people arose as one man, saying, Not one of us will go to his tent, nor will any of us return to his house. But we now know what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. We will take 10 men of 100 throughout the tribes of Israel, and 100 of 1,000, and 1,000 of 10,000 to supply provisions for the troops, so that when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, they may do to them according to all the disgrace that they have committed in Israel. So all the men of Israel gathered against the town together as one man, and the tribes of Israel sent men throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, What is this wickedness that has taken place among you? Now therefore give up the men, the worthless fellows that are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death, and purge the evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their kinsman Bani Israel. So the children of Benjamin were gathered from their towns to Gibeah to go out to battle against Bani Israel. On that day the children of Benjamin mustered 26,000 swordsmen from the town, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who numbered 700 chosen men. Out of the troops there were 700 chosen men that were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair not miss. Meanwhile, the men of Israel, apart from Benjamin, numbered 400,000 swordsmen, all men of war. Then Bani Israel rose, went up to Bethel, and inquired of God. They asked, Who is to go up first to battle for us against the children of Benjamin? Adonai replied, Judah first. So Bani Israel rose up in the morning and camped against Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and arrayed for the battle of Gibeah. But the children of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and struck down 22,000 men of Israel in the field that day. But the people of the men of Israel rallied their strength and arrayed for the battle again in the same place where they had arrayed themselves the first day. Yet Bani Israel went up and wept before Adonai until evening. They inquired of Adonai, saying, Shall I again draw near to a battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? Adonai said, Go up against him. So Bani Israel advanced against the day of the children of Benjamin on the second day. Benjamin came out against them from Gibeah again on the second day, and struck down 18,000 of Bani Israel in the field, all drawing the sword. Then Bani Israel went up, and all the people came to Bethel, and wept and sat there before Adonai. They fasted that day until evening, and they offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before Adonai. Then Bani Israel inquired of Adonai, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days, and Pinchas son of Eleazar son of Aaron had ministered before it in those days, saying, Shall I yet again go out to battle against the children of Benjamin my brother, or should I cease? Adonai replied, Go up, for tomorrow I will give him into your hands. So Israel set men to ambush against Gibeah on all sides. Then Bani Israel advanced against the children of Benjamin on the third day, and arrayed against Gibeah as at other times. The children of Benjamin came out against the people, but they were drawn away from the town, and they began to strike and kill some of the people, about 30 men of Israel, and at other times in the highways, of which one goes up to Bethel and the other to Gibeah. So the children of Benjamin said, They are defeated before us as before. But Bani Israel said, Let us flee and draw away from them, from the towns to the highways. Then all the troops of Israel rose up from their place and arrayed themselves at Baal Tamar. And the troops of Israel in ambush burst out of their place west of Gibeah. Then 10,000 troops chosen from all of Israel made a frontal attack on Gibeah, and the battle became fierce. But the Benjaminites did not know that the disaster was about to strike them. Then Adonai struck Benjamin before Israel. All Bani Israel killed 125,000, or 25,100 of Benjamin that day, all drawing the sword. So the children of Benjamin realized that they were defeated. Now the men of Israel had yielded ground to Benjamin, because they relied on the ambush that they had laid against Gibeah. So the men in ambush rushed suddenly upon Gibeah, and the men in another ambush advanced and struck the whole town with the edge of the sword. Now there was a prearranged sign between the men of Israel and the men in ambush. They would make a great beacon of smoke rise up from the town. Then the men of Israel would return to the battle. When Benjamin began to strike, killing about 30 of the men in Israel, they said, Surely they are defeated before us, as in the first battle. But when the beacon began to arise from the town and a pillar of smoke, Benjamin looked behind them, and behold, the whole town was going up in smoke in the sky. The men of Israel turned back, and the men of Benjamin were terrified, for they realized that the disaster had struck them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel toward the way of the wilderness, but their battle overtook them. Meanwhile those who came from the towns massacred them in their midst. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them, and easily